Hey there, and welcome to this week's edition of The Wrap. What is this weather? We hope you're bundled up and safe wherever you are across Mzansi. In this week's Wrap, Phala Phala is back in focus and heading to the ConCourt. Could Cupcake be booted out? Meanwhile, Zuma and Kallie Kriel met last Thursday, and we're all wondering what unholy alliance they're concocting. We also tell you about a heroic mission out of Mpumalanga involving helicopters and croc-infested waters. So, let's dive into these stories, and do check out our website if you can. We have a survey we'd love for you to fill in. So, the Constitutional Court will rule on Parliament's handling of the Phala Phala scandal on Friday. The question is whether MPs acted lawfully when they voted against launching an impeachment inquiry into President Cyril Ramaphosa. The case stems from a Section 89 panel report, which found enough evidence to justify an inquiry into the theft of about $580,000 in foreign currency from Ramaphosa's Limpopo farm. The EFF and ATM argue Parliament used ANC numbers, not constitutional principles, to make the whole thing disappear into the sofa cushions. Tsisi Tolashe spent much of Wednesday's parliamentary appearance denying and deflecting over her mounting scandals. The Social Development Minister refused to answer questions about luxury SUVs allegedly donated to the ANC Women's League, which she leads, but registered in her children's names, saying the matter is with Parliament's Ethics Committee. She also denied knowing that a departmental food aide was allegedly forced to hand over half her salary to Tolashe's daughter. ANC MPs rallied behind her, while Ramaphosa is apparently taking his time deciding what to do. NSFAS was placed under administration for the third time on Monday. Higher Education Minister Buti Manamela appointed Professor Hlengani Matebula to take full control, citing board resignations, irregular expenditure, ICT system delays, and serious data integrity concerns. The scheme, which funds higher education for thousands of poor and working class students, has been in crisis for years. The catch? The man tasked with fixing NSFAS's governance was himself criticized for governance failures at SARS. MK party leader Jacob Zuma and AfriForum CEO Kallie Kriel raised eyebrows this week after what both called a very constructive meeting. The unlikely duo discussed Section 235 of the Constitution, which allows cultural communities some form of self-determination. Think Orania. The talks come after the MKP introduced a bill to scrap the section, with AfriForum accusing the party of trying to centralize power and weaken property rights. No big breakthroughs were announced, but the meeting shows just how strange South African politics is getting ahead of the elections. A missing persons case in Mpumalanga took a wild turn last week after police discovered human remains inside a crocodile in the Komati River. A multi-agency search tracked the reptile to a small island, too dangerous to reach by boat, so SAPS diving unit Captain Johan Potgieter was lowered by helicopter into the croc-infested waters to retrieve the remains. This was definitely a first and hopefully the last, he said. Only in South Africa does a missing persons case end with a cop dangling over crocodiles. DNA tests are underway. In your international news, Trump says the war on Iran will be over quickly, while U.S. forces fired on an Iranian tanker and Israel continues to bomb Beirut. On Wednesday, the U.S. president talked up very good talks with Tehran and a 14-point deal reportedly on the table, covering nuclear enrichment, sanctions, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Iran says the proposal is still under review. Meanwhile, the UAE also said that it had been hit by Iranian missiles and drones for a second day running, though Tehran denied it. The olive branch comes with a side of airstrikes. Jeff Bezos' decision to co-sponsor the Met Gala this year for $10 million did not go down well. Protests erupted across New York ahead of Monday's event, with activists plastering subway cars with anti-Bezos posters, projecting slogans onto the Empire State Building, and placing 300 fake urine bottles inside the Met, a nod to claims that Amazon workers were forced to skip bathroom breaks. NYC's newly elected mayor skipped the gala entirely, citing affordability. With a 100,000 rand price tag per ticket, we get it, Zoran. China has dropped tariffs to zero for exports from 53 African countries, with one awkward exception, Eswatini. The move gives African goods cheaper access to China's massive market, with South Africa's apples reportedly first through the gate. The timing matters, as Donald Trump's old U.S. tariff plans unravel in court, China is positioning itself as Africa's friendlier trade partner. Lower tariffs sound great, but Africa's bigger challenge remains producing and shipping enough competitive goods to actually benefit from the deal. Elon Musk and Sam Altman's Silicon Valley bromance is officially dead. A California trial kicked off last week over Musk's claim that OpenAI abandoned its original AI for Humanity mission in favor of profits. Musk, who co-founded OpenAI with Altman in 2015, before leaving in 2018 after a power struggle, wants billions in damages and even wants Altman removed. OpenAI says Musk is just bitter because his own AI company, xAI, is falling behind. A verdict is expected in about 3 weeks. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni settled their Hollywood lawsuit on Monday, 2 weeks before trial. The legal battle began in 2024 when Lively accused Baldoni of harassment, sexual misconduct, and running a smear campaign on the set of It Ends With Us. He denied it all and countersued. But his case was thrown out while a judge dismissed 10 of Lively's 13 claims, including sexual harassment, leaving little to argue about. Neither walked away with a cent, reportedly, while we've all been spared from possibly the most expensive therapy session ever. In your big stories, the hantavirus cruise outbreak is closer to home than you think. By now you've probably seen the headlines. A luxury expedition cruise ship, the MV Hondius, has become a floating health crisis. 3 people are dead, 8 cases of hantavirus have been confirmed by the World Health Organization, and 146 passengers from 23 countries are still on board, currently sailing towards Spain's Canary Islands after 3 days anchored off Cape Verde. If you're getting flashbacks to the Diamond Princess COVID outbreak in early 2020, you're not alone. It sounds like a story happening very far away, but it's not. One of the Dutch nationals who died was in Johannesburg when she passed away on the 26th of April. The day before, she had briefly boarded a KLM flight out of Ora Tambo to Amsterdam, but the crew refused to let her travel. She died the next day in Joburg. Everyone who's on that flight is now being contacted by Dutch health authorities, while our health department is working with the National Institute for Communicable Diseases and Gauteng Health Department authorities to, quote, conduct contact tracing to stop potential spread of the virus, end quote. Welcome to 2026, where contact tracing is once again a vibe. Quick background, hantavirus itself isn't new. It's a family of viruses carried by rodents found on multiple continents, usually picked up through contact with their droppings or urine. What's on the Hondius is the Andes strain, named after the South American mountain range where it's endemic. It's one of the very few hantaviruses that can spread person to person, though only through very close physical contact. WHO officials have been quick to stress this is nothing like COVID-19, no casual airborne transmission required. The cruise began in Ushuaia, the southern tip of Argentina, on the 1st of April, which is why Argentina authorities are now investigating whether passengers were exposed to rodents before setting sail. Argentina has recorded 101 hantavirus infections since June 2025, roughly double the caseload of the same period last year. Infectious disease specialist Hugo Pizzi told the Associated Press that climate change is the driver. Warming has made parts of Argentina more tropical, encouraging the plants whose seeds feed the rodents that carry the virus. More heat, more rodents, more virus. 5 years after COVID-19 rewrote our vocabulary, the comparisons are inevitable. But hantavirus is rare, hard to catch, and the experts are saying don't panic. Maybe just give the cruise a miss this year. National Health Insurance Showdown lands at the ConCourt. If you have medical aid, the ConCourt case unfolding right now is one to watch. The legal challenge centers on the National Health Insurance Act, signed into law in May 2024, which aims to create a universal state-run healthcare system. The Board of Healthcare Funders and the Western Cape government are challenging the law in the ConCourt, arguing Parliament rushed it through ahead of the 2024 elections without telling South Africans the basics: what it costs, what it covers, or how it actually works. The case could eventually reshape medical aid, since the Act proposes limiting schemes to services not covered by the NHI. During proceedings, Justice Stephen Majid said the public participation process left people, quote, groping around in the dark, close quote. Parliament and Health Minister Alan Matsoledy's legal team disagree, citing nearly 350,000 written submissions and thousands who attended public hearings. But several judges sounded uneasy, especially about cost. Justice Majid described the scheme as frightfully expensive, which is judicial speak for who exactly is paying for this. The bigger issue hiding under all the constitutional jargon is Section 33 of the Act. Once NHI is fully operational, the clause says medical schemes will only be allowed to cover treatments not already offered by the state. Translation, your medical aid stops being your main healthcare plan and becomes a top-up. For now, nothing has changed. President Ramaphosa already paused implementation while the court challenge plays out, but the judgment, expected late in 2026, could reshape the entire healthcare industry. 3 outcomes seem most likely. Firstly, the court could uphold the act in its entirety, meaning the NHI rollout would accelerate and Section 33 would move closer to reality. Or it could keep the act but require Parliament to publish proper costings and clearer benefits first, slowing implementation dramatically. Lastly, it could strike the law down on procedural grounds, sending it back to Parliament for another round of consultation and delaying everything by years. That last option matters politically too. The Parliament that passed the bill no longer exists. South Africa is now governed by the GNU, where the ANC still backs NHI, but the DA very much does not. So this case is no longer just about healthcare. It's quietly becoming yet another ideological cage fight for the GNU. In your last long brief, South Africa is once again having a very loud argument about migrants. Shops have shut, roads have been blocked, protesters marched through Durban, Pretoria and Johannesburg in the past week, chanting variations of "send foreigners home." And with local government elections now just 6 months away, political parties are increasingly joining in. At the center of the latest protest is March and March, an anti-immigrant group founded by Durban radio personality Jacinta Ngobese Zuma. The movement says it is trying to clean up communities. Critics say it looks a lot more like vigilantism. The group has carried out raids on migrant-owned businesses and drawn support from politicians linked to Action South Africa, the MK Party, the IFP, and the Patriotic Alliance. But here's the awkward part for everyone blaming migrants for South Africa's problems. The numbers don't really support the panic. According to the 2022 census, around 2.4 million foreign-born people live in South Africa. That's roughly 3.9% of the population, the lowest proportion recorded in more than a decade. Meanwhile, more than 12 million South Africans are unemployed under the expanded definition, which includes people who have stopped looking for work. In other words, a relatively small migrant population cannot realistically explain a massive unemployment crisis. That has not stopped migration from becoming one of the country's hottest political talking points. Lauren Landau, a migration scholar at Wits University, told Explain that South Africa is following a global trend where anti-immigrant rhetoric is moved from the political fringes into the mainstream. Statements that might have once ended political careers are now being repeated at rallies and on campaign stages. Political theorist Richard Pitthouse argues that migration is being used as a distraction from deeper failures around housing, jobs, crime, and service delivery. It is easier to point at migrants, he says, than explain why electricity still cuts out and taps still run dry after decades of promises. The timing also matters. Local elections are becoming more competitive, opposition parties are fighting for attention, and migration has become politically useful shorthand for frustration and anger, which means the real story here might not be migration itself. It is how fear around migration is being turned into a campaign strategy. We are Full Explainer on explain.co.za. That's it for this week. Remember to share the love. Tell your friends to sign up at explain.co.za/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.